C-11. I think this is being it's in progress currently. Also, I just want to point out I am dumb as fuck, so some of this I might not be able to explain. I probably won't even understand it myself. This bill is meant to make some changes to the Broadcasting Act. It is meant to add online undertakings, which is basically stuff like YouTube, as a distinct class of broadcasting undertakings. So this basically adds to the currently existing Broadcasting Act sites that broadcast over the internet, specifically such as Crave TV, Netflix, stuff like that. An online undertaking that provides a social media service such as Twitter. The act does not apply to programs uploaded to something like Twitter by a user of the service. Update the broadcasting policy for Canada set out in Section 3 of the Act, among other things, providing that the Canadian broadcasting system should serve the needs and interests of all Canadians, including Canadians from racialized communities and Canadians of diverse ethno-cultural backgrounds, socioeconomic statuses, abilities and disabilities, sexual orientations, gender identities, and expressions, and ages, and provide opportunities to Indigenous persons, programming that reflects Indigenous cultures and that is Indigenous in languages, and program that is accessible without barriers to persons with disabilities. Basically just means, develop programs that meet the needs of people who may be hard of hearing, or if they're visually impaired, and we already have stuff for that, so this doesn't seem to be changing much. Specify that the Canadian Radio, Television and Telecommunications Commission must regulate and supervise the Canadian Broadcasting System, CBC, in a manner that takes into account the different characteristics of English, French, and Indigenous languages, facilitates the provision to Canadians of Canadian programs in both official languages, French and English, facilitates the provision of programs that are accessible without barriers to persons with disabilities. The Commission is going to regulate and supervise the CBC to make sure that the CBC considers, the different languages, considers a bunch of other stuff, and actually makes an effort to provide to Canadians various Canadian programs in both languages, take into account the variety of broadcasting undertakings to which the Act applies, and avoids imposing obligations on any class of broadcasting undertakings if that imposition will not contribute to a material manner to the implementation of the broadcasting policy. Holy fucking words. Jesus Christ, I hate these so much. This is why nobody reads these things. This is the problem, alright? People see Bill C-11, and the first post they see on Twitter that either says this is good or this is bad, people just repeat it. And they don't actually read what this is saying. And I don't blame them. Listen to this bullshit. Takes into account the variety of broadcasting undertakings to which the Act applies and avoids imposing obligations on any class of broadcasting undertakings if that imposition will not contribute in a material manner to the implementation of the broadcasting policy. What the fuck? Jesus. That is a lot of words. And if it made sense to you, you're insane. This is why people don't read these things, and instead they just repeat whatever nonsensical take some fucking random person on Twitter says. Okay, I think I understand what this is saying. The CBC cannot make a broadcasting corporation or program or whatever do certain things if that specific thing does not contribute to the implementation of this act and the policies within. The CBC, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, can't just invent their own obligations for certain programs that is not listed in here. Replace the Commission's power to impose conditions on a license with the power to make orders imposing conditions on the carrying of a broadcasting undertakings. So this is gonna redefine, I guess, what the Commission is capable of doing with regards to all of this. and its ability to impose conditions on a license, a broadcasting license in this case, provide the Commission with the power to require persons carrying on broadcasting undertakings make expenditures to support the Canadian broadcasting system. The way I'm understanding this is it is basically to, pay money that supports the CBC. To who specifically that applies to, I'm not entirely certain. Amend the procedure by which the Governor and Council may, under Section 28 of the Act, set aside a decision of the Commission to issue, amend, or renew a license, or refer such a decision back to the Commission for reconsideration hearing. All these words. This is what I hate about these things. I despise these things. That entire fucking word vomit bullshit just to say the Governor and Council can put off a decision to renew a license. That's it. That's all it's saying. A person shall not carry on a broadcasting undertaking other than an online undertaking. So, for example, going back to YouTube, unless they do so in accordance with the license or they are exempt from the requirement to hold a license. So basically, I can't just start my own broadcasting corporation and broadcast shit on live TV or on the internet unless I have a license, or I do it through something like Netflix, or for some reason I'm exempt from the requirement to have a license. Hurry up already! Holy shit, Chad. Why is everyone... The one time I try to talk about important issues with our legal system, and everyone's like, play the game! Play the game, you cunt! I came here for the game! Cry about it. Relax. You know how the VOD is saved? You can come back later and watch the VOD. And you can skip the stuff that you don't care about. Regardless, I think you should care. Because this literally affects the internet. This literally affects social media. This affects YouTube, Netflix, Twitch. Alright? You think it's boring as fuck? I'm sorry I can't make it more entertaining. Regardless, I think it's important. That is why we're talking about it and not playing the game. But we're gonna play it later. So, fucking chew on your edibles and relax. So far, what I'm getting from a lot of this is just like making sure that content is like available, like any content. Well, not any content, but like content is available and viewable by, I don't know, people with disabilities, people with certain language barriers. There's no I'd seen some tweets of people being like, oh, the government's going to control what information you receive. And I'm not seeing where that could occur in this. Do you see YouTube advertising a petition to stop this? No. Okay. Maybe someone who's smarter than me can make sense of this.
Hey everyone, it's Brandon from the Brandon Gona Show, and I'm working with YouTube to share an update on some new legislation in the works in Canada. It's called the Online Streaming Act, or Bill C-11. It can determine how content appears on YouTube, including the homepage and Watch Next section. Plus, a regulator could force artificial promotion of some creators and content over others, which could impact how content reaches global audiences and could hurt views and revenue.
So our recommendations are a really key part of our YouTube viewer experience. And we've designed them to really help viewers find videos that they would enjoy watching based on what each viewer is interested in. We really want to help them discover creators and channels that are going to be really interesting to them.
I think I get like what they're saying, in that it would change the way stuff is recommended. This would be specific to Canada, right? Let's also not forget that, right? If you're outside of Canada, this will not affect you whatsoever. In Canada, this might shake up how recommendations work a little bit. And I think that's because this is pushing more Canadian content by Canadians for Canadians, but it's also not, I don't believe that means there won't be any non-Canadian content. That's kind of how I'm understanding this, right? You'll basically just see like more stuff made by Canadians mixed in with all the other regular content. Talking about YouTube specifically, I imagine it would be the similar for other things as well. Whereas currently YouTube's algorithm basically just pushes like whatever is popular, in combination with like based on what your previous watch history is. if you watch videos from a specific channel, if you like the video, if you comment on the video, if you watch the video in its entirety, you don't even need to subscribe to that channel. If those other 3 boxes are ticked, the algorithm will push more videos from that channel to you. And it does all of this regardless of language, regardless of region, etc., etc., right? So there's the possibility, and I think this is what YouTube is concerned about, and YouTube creators. There's the possibility that this change to the Broadcasting Act would override some of those recommendations in favor of certain content specifically created in Canada by someone who's Canadian. Maybe not even just in Canada, but just by somebody who's Canadian, or by people who are Canadian, right? Which is, I think, an understandable concern. I don't know if I'm totally against it, provided you still get recommendations from other areas of the world, right? I don't mind seeing a bit of Canadian stuff mixed in there. If that's how it plays out, then that's totally fine by me.
Basically, we know a regulator could make YouTube show a certain amount of Canadian videos to Canadians.
Which I
so
said already.
Does that mean you'd have to change the recommendation system?
So first, let me tell you a little bit about how the recommendation system works today. So we collect a lot of feedback from viewers in the form of like looking at what they watch, what they don't watch, how long they watch it, whether they click like or dislike. Really aim to recommend the best videos to each viewer based on their personal interests.
Okay, so if Canadians get artificially served up Canadian content, what happens to the systems?
So what would happen is we'd end up mismatching viewers to videos that they would be most interested in. In the space of Canadian content creators, we would be showing their videos to people who would be less interested than other videos. And what that ends up meaning is the reaction from those viewers is likely to be that they're less likely to click on those videos. If they do click on the videos, they would be less likely to like them, or maybe they would dislike them or watch them a lot less. And so that negative feedback that we collect can actually have a ripple through the system, because it basically teaches the system that this content from Canadian creators isn't as engaging and satisfying as other content that is not getting kind of like pushed too much in the system. When we would introduce, sort of artificial recommendations, it would hurt the viewers, because then we would be promoting recommendations that they wouldn't be interested in watching. They may end up deciding that they're not as interested in using the platform at all because they're not getting as relevant results. And so we really don't want to be recommending things to viewers that they're not interested in watching, because then they'll potentially leave, and that reduces the opportunity for everyone.
Interesting indeed. Yeah, so a lot of that makes sense. I think I pretty much explained most of that already. Even Jordan Peterson seems to be entirely against. Let's see what Mr. P has to say.
I went through this new bill C-11 because I'm one of the people whom it will hypothetically affect, although I have enough.
There's something about seeing this guy with an AirPod. Oh my god. I don't know why I find this so incredibly amusing. Is that even working? Does he even have it turned on? Probably not. He's probably just like, he's just hearing like dogs barking outside. He's pretending that he can hear Jordan Peterson.
Now, as far as I can tell, reading Bill C-11, which is an unbelievably vague document, if I agree. Internet service provider, a private one, doesn't broadcast in French and English and in indigenous languages and to any diverse range of people with disabilities and highlight Canadian content, then the government can do what it needs to do to deprioritize their distribution, and they'll do that by putting pressure on.
I hadn't even thought of that. That's pretty much what it kind of from what we'd read before. If you stream and your content is not Canadian focused, doesn't adhere to the proper outlines and parameters to be boosted to more Canadians, then it's not gonna fly.
And I read this bill, and all of it, again, Rex, too, the bill is couched in all this diversity, inclusivity, and equity terminology, which it's the same solution to every problem, right? And so not only do we have this massive press collusion with the government that's absolutely unconscionable in a Western democracy, and but we also have now the government clamping down more viciously than in any other developed country on the freedom for Canadians to get access to all of the information on the internet, not just that produced by Canadians.
Also, I want to point out, like, I'm a very benefit of the doubt kind of person. I try to look for the positive. I try to see what sort of good-humored intent people have, right? I feel like when drawing up this bill, I don't think it was malicious. I never assume malice unless it's like in your face, undeniable. I get the idea. I get the idea of wanting to promote Canadian content. I get the idea of wanting to make that content more available to those who have visual disabilities, audio disabilities. I get the idea of wanting to promote that to people who are French speaking or English speaking. I feel like this bill had good intentions to, just make Canadian stuff more available to Canadians. That's it. End of sentence. Period. Make Canadian stuff more readily available to Canadians, as well as foreign stuff more readily available to Canadians if they adhere to some of these guidelines, right? So yeah, I think they started this with like good intentions and then just perhaps they didn't really consider the ramifications, which even now I'm just kind of discovering I wasn't really thinking about it either, to be honest. So yeah, this would be nice. Clarify how it applies to people.
Everyone knows that this is a bill that amends the Broadcasting Act and modernizes it as well. 30 years ago, we passed this bill, and it hasn't been modernized since.
Moments ago, a very talented new member of Parliament in this place, the honourable member for Fort McMurray Cold Lake, spoke about wishing that we could put it in more concrete, entrenched form, that freedom of expression and freedom of speech is respected in this land, and every Canadian knows they have a right to those things. And I would say, with all respect to that member, we have that. We have that. We have the right of free speech and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and beyond.
Yeah, I think we read earlier in the bill, and it does mention that the bill would be, I'm trying to remember what it said. It was like, with respect to the right to creative freedom, free speech, etc., etc. It said something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing heavily, but the bill already does mention that.
On that, the act which this act amends, it amends, but doesn't cancel, it doesn't repeal, it doesn't wipe out these words. The Broadcasting Act, for the last 30 years, has entrenched the right of Canadians to freedom of expression. Nothing in this modernization in C-11 changes in any way our rights to freedom of expression. This bill doesn't censor anything. It doesn't change what we can see and what we can't see, what we can hear and what we can't hear. It attempts to achieve greater protections for Canadians and many different varieties of Canadians against the powers of the new digital world. I'm going to focus a little bit of...
I'm not sure how I feel about that statement. I don't know even if that is what it's trying to do, it doesn't sound like it's going to do that very well. Or it's going to do that by just stamping out anything that doesn't meet their criteria. So just promoting non-Canadian, non-French and English, non-subtitled, promoting that type of content less, promoting Canadian content more. Yeah, I think, what did she say exactly?
Against the powers of the new digital world.
Yeah. I don't think it's really protecting in the way she thinks it is, or the way she's saying it will.
But before I talk about the good the bill does, let me say where I hope we will observe closely how the bill works and be more than prepared to take it up again within the next year or two, I would suspect, if we have the problems that we fear we may have with the failure to make sure that Canadians who are not in the government's intentions supposed to be caught by this bill and differentiate the impact of the act on those people from the impact on the large digital platform.
Yeah, it doesn't even go into, I don't think it even takes into account like a Canadian creator who is, for the purpose of, say, education, discussing matters not related to Canada. What happens if somebody wants to talk about, the war between Russia and Ukraine? That is not Canadian related. Perhaps that individual doesn't speak French or they don't speak English. Does their content get overlooked by content produced by a Canadian? Or maybe not even produced by a Canadian, produced by an American, but it talks about Canadian content or something Canadian related, is French and Canadian. I don't know what fucking American would speak both French and American and Canadian, but I don't know. It's there's a lot of vagueness, as we've already established throughout this bill. It doesn't really get into the specifics, which is problematic, to say the least.
Whether it's the Netflix or the Craze or the HBOs. We're not intending to capture users who place their content on YouTube. One of the differentiations that I found quite useful that I actually heard from Professor Michael Geist was there's a difference between a platform, a place where you can put things, and the word he uses that is curated versus one that is not curated. I wish the government had used that kind of language in C-11 because I think it clarifies things a great deal. In other words, instead of concentrating on who does what on a platform.
There's also the big issue, which I kind of ranted about earlier, in that the way these documents read, and the reason why nobody fucking reads them, is because they don't use modern language, right? She says platforms, all right? I'm pretty sure most, if not all people watching this, which is 2 people, you know what you mean when I mean when I say platform. When I say platform, I'm referring to YouTube. YouTube is a platform, Twitch is a platform, Facebook is a platform. It's a platform, it's a social platform. The bill never says any of that. I don't think it ever mentions the word platform. It talks about broadcasting undertaking, broadcaster undertaking, licenses, stuff like that. Who the fuck knows what that means? I had to look it up. It makes it difficult for, ordinary people to read and understand, which I pointed out earlier. And I get that is historically normal, but I don't think it should be anymore. I feel like, when it comes to making laws and agreements, whether it be at the government level or the industry level or anything like that, it should be in a language that people understand, with words that are clear and concise and understood by majority of the population.
Differentiate between the systems, differentiate between the platforms. So if we were to say, look, there's this area where there's a conscious effort to promote certain content. It's a curated place versus one that everybody and their, I won't say everybody and their dog, because as far as I know, dogs can't yet do this, although my dog's awfully clever. But everybody can put stuff up, and it's not being curated to meet a certain purpose. If it's being curated to meet a certain purpose or to create different profits, then that would have, I think, been a better differentiation than what we have in C-11. What we have in C-11 has left us divided. And the question, I don't disagree one bit with my colleague from Kitchener Centre, that this bill should be much better, clearer on that question of platform versus user. Platforms in, users out is the government's intent. I believe it is, but the drafting does not make that sufficiently clear. And I think we'll have to go back to it and improve on this and clarify this. I remain concerned that the CRTC has a lot of clout and power in this, and I hope that we see that the CRTC is guided by the best information from people who are skeptical about this bill to make sure its use does not do anything but improve the situation for Canadians.
I don't think there's any improvement that needs to be done, at least from on the government side. Sure, platforms like YouTube can improve their recommendation system, the way they promote shorts and streams, and the way they can improve all sorts of stuff. But I feel like that is something for the platform to do. As for like going back to like the bare bones of what I think this bill is trying to accomplish, which is just push more Canadian content to Canadians, I don't think that's an inherently bad thing. ideally, it doesn't overshadow content that is not Canadian. I would love to see indie films made by Canadians being pushed alongside indie films made by foreign countries, made by Americans, made by whoever. I don't want to see Canadian content be overshadowing other content, if that makes sense. That I think would be ideal, and I think that would be fine if that is what it tries to accomplish. Whether or not it actually does accomplish that is a whole nother deal, which would be one of those things we'd just have to see.
I won't use that, but people who enjoy culture, people who are edified by culture, people who are ennobled by culture, those of us who are essentially the audience need to benefit from this act just as the creators do. And the discussion around...
Yes, and in order to benefit, we would have to, I think, just getting only Canadian stuff, or getting more Canadian stuff than other stuff, is not a huge benefit.
We've heard a lot in this place about films like The Handmaid's Tale, and it's not sufficiently Canadian content when the leads and the producers and the people holding the cameras and the people yelling, cut, are not Canadian. And that's what C-11 hopes to repair. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Okay, I get what she's trying to say. Because the book was initially Canadian, the show should also be acted, produced, directed by Canadians, which I don't know how I feel about that. I feel like that's a little restrictive. Maybe that's just me. I totally get why you'd want to feel that way though. Like I don't see the problem with having an American cast and crew recreate something Canadian.
But also, I think it is true that it's essential to have cultural products from here produced by Canadians and Quebecers. And
okay, that's understandable. That's understandable. I get it. The importance of our culture being represented by Canadians, I totally understand that. Yeah, I can side with that. Honestly, with regards to who performs what and like what cast and crew works on what, I'm kind of indifferent. I'm gonna say it. I'm pretty indifferent to it. If you want to have a cast and crew that's entirely Canadian to create a culturally a Canadian culture, recreate it, however it is, by all means do that. As far as regulating that, though, I feel like that can get kind of dicey. I'm not entirely against the idea, but it's a slippery slope, right? I don't know. I'll be totally honest. I don't know. I don't know how you would go about that in a reasonable manner that everyone can kind of agree on. It sounds a little dicey to me. Anyway, since everyone and their mom is malding in chat because I'm not playing the game that I said I'd play, when this is done, we'll play it. No one's forcing you to. It feels like false advertising. It's not false. I'm doing something different and then I'm doing the game. It's not false advertising. False advertising would be if after this I ended the stream and we never played the game. I'm gonna play the game. Relax.
We know that this C-11 does give sweeping new powers to the CRTC, and my question is that we have heard that the government is not willing to disclose the policy directive for the CRTC, and is that not concerning to the member that we're giving the CRTC these new powers without actually knowing what their mandate is going to be and what the policy directive will be?
So we need to keep a pressure up to say we need to see from the government the directive to the CRTC, and we need more transparency from the CRTC.
At least they're on board with that. At least they're on board with that. Okay. All right. Are you happy, chat? The video's over. We can play the game now. So to summarize, Bill C-11 making some changes, basically to include online streaming, online video uploading, online broadcasting of the sorts under the Act. Broadcasting Act, as well as some changes with regards to the definitions on the policies, etc. The concerns being that it might hinder how content is promoted on certain websites, such as YouTube, for example, that it might promote non-Canadian content less and Canadian content more, overshadowing other creators. And the other concern, which the last video just brought up was that the powers that the committee or commission or whatever it is that like oversees this sort of stuff, that part is not defined. We don't know what their powers are. They're new powers, as this bill pointed out. The commission has new powers with how it oversees different broadcasts, and we don't know what those are. And also, this entire document is just vague as fuck, and no one wants to read it. So that's the TLDR of this. Anyway, Chad is losing their goddamn minds. So let's play the game.